Thank you. All right, so yes, as he said, I work for CSIRO. I'm part of their IT group, and we have a group of, I think, 11 people who work in web solutions. We look after a number of different platforms. Our biggest one is Sitecore, but WordPress also is forming an increasingly important part of it. I'm joined here by Aidan Lagatz, who's my colleague there and who's been developing, helping develop some of the front-end themes and plugins over the last couple of years, and it's also our graphic designer. Okay, so has anyone here heard of CSIRO, apart from in the introduction? Familiar with what we do? Okay, so we are a national science agency. We've done all sorts of things like help contribute to the Wi-Fi algorithm, track spaceships landing on the moon, you know, may have seen the dish, and influenza treatments, and also built Australia's first computer, CSIRO. So I'm skipping ahead of myself here. This is what I will be talking about, but I was wondering why my notes didn't match. Yeah, so we have around 5,500 staff doing all types of research from the bottom of the ocean to the outer reaches of the universe at about 55 sites across Australia. And you know, we've got to, we support them in providing the information online. And one of the reasons I enjoy working for CSIRO is just the diverse range of amazing conversations you can have with all the different people and what they do. And you know, anything you can think of, basically. And so I'll say that another one that you may be more familiar with is our Data 61. So if you're into IT stuff, they were formed from the merger of our IT research in CSIRO and NICTA. So they're a sort of a new addition to the family. And we also help look after their systems as well. All right, so I wasn't always a web developer. I actually studied maths and physics at university. Back in early 1994, I did a course in bioinformatics at the ANU with Professor David Green. Along with topics like genetic algorithms and cellular automata, we also learned about online information repositories like Archie, Gopher, and the World Wide Web. Now, 1994 is a bit of a pivotal year in the web. It started moving outside of academia and became into the commercial world. But at that point, it was very different to what we have today. We were tasked to create an HTML page in that course in bioinformatics. And about the only elements we had available were basically headings, paragraphs, lists, and images. There's no JavaScript, no, not really many forms and things like that. And there was just one major graphical browser called Mosaic 1.0. So don't know if anyone else has seen that here, but you know, it was the forerunner of Netscape, which eventually has become Firefox and various other things. So that was, you know, it was quite rare. Professor Green set up Australia's first web server, life.anu.edu.au, and you can see, well, that's an older version of it on there. He moved to Charles Sturt University eventually, but you can see how very simple it was, and you know, a picture of Mosaic down the bottom. So that was Australia's very first web server, apparently, according to him. And the World Wide Web itself was set up for, by Tim Berners-Lee, and that's to share science information at CERN, you know, the atom smashing place under France and Switzerland. So, you know, it didn't start off as a tool to book flights or to buy pizzas, or do banking, or to advertise your web services, or anything, most of the stuff it seems to do today. You couldn't buy books, you couldn't download music, none of that. So when I started at CSIRO in early 2001, most of the different divisions, so we separate into different groups within things like mining and energy and astronomy and that, they each had their own separate website, and they'd all look rather different. However, there was soon a push to centralise everything as the web became less about scientists communicating with scientists and more about marketing and public relations and how you communicate to the broader audience. So they started wanting to centralise and use common themes, common designs, make sure the branding, the language was similar, and to target this wider audience. And you can see here various iterations of it, and if you squint tightly, you can actually see a logo changing across different times. So this is a very early version on the left that I got off the archive, the Wayback Machine, and up to the latest one down the very bottom. So communicating with this larger audience, this is a good thing, surely. A focus on making our research, our information accessible to a wider audience, not just to people who are actually studying it and who are the experts who are familiar with it. And in fact, that could be interpreted as part of our charter, the act that dates back, I think, to 1920s, 1916, something like that, that defines CSIRO. So we've actually got a duty to communicate our research with the public. So, we've now got our central website, www.csiro.eu, the one down the bottom. And that's where we talk about all the wonderful things that we do. It runs on Sitecore, which is a .NET application, and Sitecore is an enterprise-grade content management system. It's got lots of component reuse. It's got strong workflow and templating. So it's quite unlike WordPress in many ways by default. And we need a team to look after it. If you want a new website in Sitecore, you need to put effort into creating it. So, looking at all the marketing threads around here, looking at what a lot of the people do, you might think that maximising the number of hits on our website is the most important things. You want to get more people, you want the biggest audience, and that's true if you're looking at getting what most people as customers, or a wide range of customers, or if you're trying to make money out of advertising, or if you're just trying to share a message as widely as possible to the world. So, that it is important. But, animated GIFs do work. Is bigger always better? Sometimes it's not about absolute numbers. The impact of science research may be felt across society. But the details, as I said, they may only be the domain of a limited number of specialists. Maybe only a few tens of specialists, maybe a few hundreds, sometimes thousands. And science is an international endeavour. So people are distributed across the globe. And their clients are often too. So, while we do research for Australia, our research is often applicable to China or Indonesia or to United States. We've got sites in France. I think they study wine, basically, but we've got Chile as well, and they don't actually do wine. I think they do water research and mining over there. One in the US and connections in Singapore. So, we need to talk to people across the world, but our research groups also need to share information. And websites are useful not just for advertising, they're useful for sharing that knowledge and preserving it. So when a research group has achieved something, they want to share the fact that they have done that work, that they have expertise in that area, even if they're not doing it now. But that reputation, that showcasing your capabilities is very important for them. That's how it works. They don't come to look at the CSIRO and say, look, you do all this fantastic research across all these different areas. You do it in bushfires, you do it in computing, you do it there. When you're looking to start studying, doing a postdoc, or when you're looking to see, do I really want to work with these people? You look at, does the team, what do they know? Who's working for them? Just a small group. Do they have the capability? Are they worth talking to? And that's where the main website falls down a bit, because it's talking about the bigger picture. You know, a government cares that you can do all these kinds of research, but the person in the department who actually might make the decision, they care that you know this particular, you can solve this particular little problem that they're having with drought or soil or water flow in a tributary of the Murray-Darling Basin. So, and that's what we're trying to do. So, for those of you not in science, this is still applicable. So, I don't know about anybody here, but one of the reasons I got into PHP and open source development was the quality of documentation available. Now you go to, I remember when starting off, you know, it's a choice, maybe PHP or ASP. And, you know, do we use MySQL? Do we use Oracle? I had to use Oracle and PHP, and that's not fun. But there, I was looking at the online documentation for that, the books, and they're all trying to sell you something. They're telling you how wonderful that is, but you need a certification in their jargon just to understand what you're trying to do. You can't, they won't tell you in plain English what you're trying to achieve. Whereas things like the WordPress Codex and the PHP manual, documentation, they do what I want to know. They tell you what the parameters are, what the function is, and a few examples how to get it going. Just give me the facts. Don't try to sell me. Don't try to make me feel good about using it. And this is true for WordPress plugins. It's true for themes. You know, it's true for all sorts of technologies. Think about actually just communicating the facts, just showing that. The big bosses, they might like to hear how wonderful and shiny that technology is, but there are those who are in the technical area who they just need to know how to make it work. So anyway, let's get back to the science. So scientists need to be able to communicate in their own language. And that means they have to author it themselves. Now, we have a large communications group, and their job is to interpret what the scientific words and to spread it out to the wider community. But, you know, often they don't actually have much expertise in the particular area itself. And scientists to scientists, technical to technical, they need to use the language that they're familiar with. So, if they're trying to do it on CSIRO.eu, they have to go through a training course, and they're limited, and it goes through a workflow, it gets checked before it goes online. They don't have the time to learn how to put all the little bits and pieces together on the site. They just want to be able to type it in, publish it, and their audience is small enough, we don't care if the message is slightly wrong, the language is slightly out, you know, we can correct that afterwards. Probably nobody really is going to notice. So WordPress is our tool for that. Well, yeah, sorry about that. So, but we don't want to let them entirely be free. Now, some of you may remember the old days of academic homepages when, you know, you had the university name /tilde/ little name for username for the person. And they come up with their homepages were the last bastion of ancient HTML, along with cranks. So I did find an academic homepage, but I thought the crank was more interesting. And that's the old time cube, one version of it. We all love their old way of jumbling up everything together with a few colours, and even better if they have a rainbow separator and blinking text. But we don't want to get into that. Many of the researchers, some of them do, some of them think they're the world's greatest designers, but a lot of them, they just want to type and go. And that's what we want to give them, that tool to allow them to just concentrate on the content. We'll worry about the branding. We'll keep the branding people happy, and we'll make it look good and be able to link to the rest of the organisation. So WordPress comes to the rescue. We use WordPress multisite or network. So we've got over 300 of them, of these multi-sites. We've got 3 different multi-site platforms, but the main one is research.csiro.au. So it hosts almost 200 live subsites and another 100 in various stages of preparation. And the groups that span it, from nanotechnology to teachers aboard our ship that sails around the coast, doing some really interesting research on the seafloor and on ocean currents and all sorts of things. So that research.csiro.au is 5 years old this year, and we've been looking after multi-sites for about 7 years now. And that's been a huge learning curve, and that's a learning curve that's not stopped. We're still on it. We're still learning to do things better. So, as I say, I've been PHP developer for almost 2 decades, but WordPress has its own sets of challenges. And we've battled performance issues. We've had sites that have been hacked. We've had spam attacks. People posting links to Indian pirated download videos, and drove our traffic. Just slowed the whole site down until they obeyed our instructions and shut down their little forum. Yeah. And we've had lots of near impossible deadlines because lots of different groups around the organisation, and they all want something now. I heard in previous talk about giving 8 weeks notice before you actually start a project. We're lucky. We often have 8 weeks notice that we should have done it 8 weeks ago. Yeah, we have some people that believe time travel is quite possible. So, but we don't just use WordPress for hosting research sites. We have a number of other ones. We have our CSIRO blog, which is very popular, and we have Double Helix Science Club blog. So prior to joining the CSIRO, I was a gold member of the Double Helix Science Club, back when kids could go and do things, and love that. And we also use WordPress to host CSIROpedia, which is our sort of our online repository of all our past research, well, as much as we can, research. And yeah, so it shows you can hunt back through, find out about CSIRAC and find about the moon landing, find about all sorts of things, about the people that used to work for us. So we migrated that out of Confluence, Confluence Wiki. And the big advantage of WordPress over Sitecore that it's got a huge user community and lots of plugins. You can make WordPress do virtually anything. Whether you should, it's another matter, but it can. Now, possibility of this, one thing we do, we develop most of the stuff ourselves. So I'll go through a few reasons why. There are people involved even with organising this event who have previously dealt with CSIRO. And it's us, okay, firstly. It's not to see you guys any failure on the part of other developers. So we're in a constant state of change. And I think it's probably true of most departments, but you'd be surprised for a government agency, we are always changing. And I was at a marketing meeting with YouTube guru about Data 61's messaging, and the consultant asked, how come we weren't using the word disruption? And the scientist replied, because disruption is a dirty word. We're sick of being disrupted. But it's a fact of life. And our projects go through constant changes, our staff changes, or what they're working on. Our communicators are always changing. So, and about every 3 years, your site needs to be rebuilt. Things will become incompatible. Plugins will stop being maintained. The branding will change. The designs, what's fashionable will change. So every 3 years, we need to do this. At least, people don't plan that long. They don't sign maintenance contracts for that long. And so we need to have that ability to change and change quickly. And we do things differently. Our systems, corporate systems, are very different to commercial hosting. You can't just trigger on a new domain and get your database automatically set up and have it all ready in 10 minutes with this SSL certificate. It takes time. We've got to talk to different people. And there are good reasons for this. A lot of it's to do with security. A lot of it's to do with simple manpower of maintaining our systems. We can't make it as transparent as it is if all your job is to host WordPress websites. We've got to do lots of different things. And we've got very valuable IP that we have to protect. And we've got systems that we have to protect and reputations. There's also the, as I said, we change. There's cost in the lifespan. So we might sign a contract to deliver a website, but in 3 years' time, the supplier might not be around. That's happened to us quite a few times. They might not want to host anymore, and the plugin might no longer be compatible, and who's going to pay for the whole thing anyway? So the problems come back to us. If we have to try and understand a third-party code, if they've used a different development system and all that, that costs time. We don't have the time to switch through and learn a different means of coding. We don't have the time to switch through and use a different code repository system. It costs us time. We work in very small chunks where we might be working on multiple projects at once. So, there's a high switching cost associated with it. And there's branding, and we're going through yet another rebrand, so we need to change things. And if you're using a third-party plugin or third-party theme, as we've noticed a lot of people do, they ship us a website and it's just got a small modification. They're using a lot of third-party plugins and that. We've got often they don't fit. There's something wrong because we're CSIRO and we're different. So whatever that little thing that irks the hell out of it, the one that most of us won't ever notice, but irks the hell out of branding, has to be changed, and it has to be changed now, and it can't be. So, or not without a whole lot of work or breaking it. So, we have to do something about that. And finally, there's accessibility, and this is a huge thing. So I'll just put up some stats now. You're probably better off looking at it afterwards because of time reasons, but accessibility is important. And we're covered by the Disability Discrimination Act, and we have a duty to, as much as possible, follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 level AA. Now, WordPress Core has put in a big effort, but a lot of plugins, a lot of other things are not really good for accessibility. So, again, look, you're probably better off having a look after it when the presentation is up. This is important, and I would have spent more time on it if I didn't talk so much before. But yeah, these are things that we've found in a lot of plugins, a lot of tools, a lot of products that have been supplied to us. They're missing. So we've developed our own, we developed our own theme platform. We call it NBA after our first version was called Utopia, and yes, it is related to this because Rhonda once worked for us. So it's flexible to be used on a lot of our different sites. It's got a lot of different features. You know, we can set color schemes, we can set different types of banner images. We've got accordions, accessible accordions, thanks Aidan. We can add partner logos. We've got post grids, which are our widget that we use a lot for navigation, because we use pages more than posts for our research sites, obviously, because a lot of our sites replace things like old static sites, like Dreamweaver, or even front page. Yes, wow. I had to look after front page sites, and it's not fun. So, yeah, so pages allow content, and that isn't of a more ephemeral nature, unlike posts. So post time is important. Pages are there to be read in future. And we don't use custom post types as much as possible, and we try not to use them. Our custom fields, because content portability is very important. We might be exporting our pages off to different systems in future. We don't, you know, our tools have to be flexible enough to be used across a lot of purposes. So we did build one website, this Jazeera one, which I'm not particularly proud of, but in some ways, but technically it's very complex with lots of different post types, lots of different custom fields, using advanced custom fields, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to update, and every time they change. We also don't use page builders. So there are accessibility reasons for that, and the fact that we're focused on content. We're not focused on design, really. We've got our set design. We want it to look good, but we're not worried about, well, we don't want people messing with it, basically. We don't want them to go and add little elements here and there and everywhere. We'll help them with providing them with accessible stuff. So there's lots of work to do. There's always lots of work to do. You know, we've got to increase our, make them more translatable. But the most important thing we're looking at the moment is Gutenberg. So that presents a lot of opportunities and challenges. We use a classic editor now. And unfortunately, we're using shortcodes and widgets and stuff like that for entering it. But Gutenberg obviously does present opportunities there. We're heartened to read that the goals of Gutenberg editor include a desire to retain text portability, which, as I said, is very important for us. But at the moment, we're having issues with, we think there could be issues with static blocks, because we don't want to edit a page and update it every time that something changes in the end. With 300 sites, that's going to be a real problem. Dynamic blocks won't have that problem, but then we think that there could be, you know, there are issues with code duplication. So, and also Gutenberg's changing a lot. You know, the last release had some big changes, and we need to be confident that we won't be presented with a whole lot of work to do. All right, so I've got to stop. You don't need to hear the conclusion, and I'll just say thank you.
We do have some time for some questions. If anyone's got questions for Andrew, I will run up and down the stairs like a loony.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a good presentation. Just two questions. Why do you use Sitecore instead of WordPress? And also, how do you maintain the websites in terms of, especially in security?
Okay. Well, the decision for Sitecore came before we even looked at WordPress. It's actually a toss-up between SharePoint. This dates back to the intranet days, Google sites, and Sitecore. And Sitecore has strong control over the system. So you've got the workflows, you've got really built into it, you've got components that can be reused across the site, and it's compartmentalized. So content is really, you don't have like a big main table of content. It's scattered everywhere, all the different components that form up a Sitecore page. It also means you can't export it out very easily, I believe. You had to run queries and basically search over the whole back-end system in order to do that. But it's changed a lot. But yeah, it's an enterprise-grade thing. It has control that WordPress doesn't, and it's meant for large scales. Comes with all sorts of support. And apparently, we're one of the better Sitecore developer groups across Australia. We keep being told this when going off to Sitecore conferences. So, security-wise, we've got multiple levels of security run by our IT security group, and it's always changing. We do run WordFence on our blogs. We require various forms of authentication. Monitor logs extensively, run various security scans on it. It's less of an area I'm a specialist in, so and it's also rapidly evolving. And also we just lock down what people can do. So multi-site means they can't install extra plugins. We select which plugins to install. Otherwise they would, and they have installed plugins that are, from a security standpoint, very dangerous.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's been very enlightening. One of the things that you mentioned on was with the plugins, you said that you developed them all in-house, and I can see why you're doing that. Have you considered teaming up with a collaborative effort with other people, and do you make those plugins available for other people to use?
Okay, I mean, we do use a lot of third-party plugins, firstly. So, I mean, quite clear. I mean, there are plenty of bigger ones and plenty of ones that are out there that do the job, but a lot of our plugins are meant for a very specific purpose. So it might be just to show, include a particular presentation in a page, so visualization, sorry. It might be for administrative purposes. So, for instance, we want to add which communicator is responsible for each website into the back end. So it's an extra field, or a database of publications for our group in Chile. So that was an interesting challenge because I don't speak Spanish, but so no, in that sense, no. We haven't, we'd like to make them, we'd like to contribute more. I guess this is a first step in trying to contribute something to the community. But a lot of it's time-based. There's also IP issues that we have to go and clear it with our legal team before we provide anything or contribute outside. It's something that we can do, and it's a lot simpler now, but it is just an extra burden on us. And as well as that, we feel that there's a duty of care. So if we're going to provide a plugin externally, that means that we need to have the time to properly support it and maintain it and respond to requests. And you know, we want to be confident that we'll be able to do that properly. So hopefully, yes, in future, that's something that we'll look at doing. Mainly, it's one of those things. We've just engaged in a huge amount of development over the past year. And we're still doing things like moving our sites onto the new design, and we just haven't had time to look at what we can do to contribute back, but we do want to contribute back. Sometimes I'll put things on blogs and try to answer questions and that, at least provide some information, because it is really important to us. And as for partnering, look, maybe in future it's something we'll do. We have had third parties go and provide us with sites where it has been very much outside of our the time that we can spend developing something in particular. So you know, we've had research groups go off and build. I think the Australian housing data website was done by Atomic. And we just supply them with some information about designs and stuff. But then our brand is changing. Are they going to go back and employ Atomic again to fit up all those, to change the look and feel of the site? I don't know. That's the challenge that we face. But yeah, we consider it. It's just sometimes a lot of things are just having the time to actually think about the problem and knowing who to talk to, and then dealing with all the paperwork that's involved with working with a government agency to go and engage anything.
I'm just wondering if you've experimented with different page plugins for page builders, like Elementor.
Well, I did install Elementor last night on our dev site just to give it a go. Immediately found it had accessibility issues, and even though I know that there's something, maybe a tool or some group plugin that helps with that, and also portability issues. So that was just a quick change. I have tried some over time. We have a desire for, some users have expressed desires for it, and some designs have been delivered with page builders built in. And then when we needed to redesign the site, it didn't fit. So we ran into that issue. So look, it's something we'd want to lock down. It's not something that we feel is useful at this stage, especially because our designs have to work not only across WordPress, but they also have to work across Sitecore and in the larger area, larger portfolio of websites, many of which use different technologies altogether. Gutenberg will probably give us enough freedom for adding element or little widgets into web pages that we need. At the moment, we use shortcodes for that. Page builders, likelihood is they'll make a mess of it. Not everybody, but there'll be groups that just add things willy-nilly across the page, and it will not look good, and it will not be accessible at all. And we already struggle with accessibility, really, and content.
Oh yeah, just on that point, where do you use SiteGround and where do you use WordPress? Is it like just for blogging for WordPress? Or?
Sorry, which?
Whereabouts do you use Sitecore and where do you use WordPress? Okay,
we use Sitecore on our more complicated sites, so our major website. So if you go to www.csiro.au, you will see Sitecore in action. We use it for our intranet. So those are the two biggest ones. We use it. Licensing reasons means we can't use it on any partner websites with different domains. But we use it for our national ship. We use it for things where we've got lots of complicated content types. So different pages that need to do different things, different styling, where trained people will be editing the content. And only a limited group of trained people that can commit to proper training, to following the different steps. And these steps, there's a workflow involved. There's lots of different fields to fill out. There's lots of different template types and things like that. We use it for that. But for the WordPress stuff, it's more for the quick and dirty in many ways. The stuff that we don't have so much money invested in and that we want to go and put out, but we don't have the time to put much effort in. Like now we can deliver a website, a custom one, in a few days, basically, if we want to, if we were pushed. But yeah, we can do things within a week to have a little custom website going for people without content, but that's their problem.
All right, everyone, thank Andrew.